Hi, my name is Jim Clark, and in today's tip, I would like to talk about the 10% rule as it applies to retail shops. This is not applicable to service businesses because they do work on a different model. But if you're in a retail situation, then the 10% rule effectively says that your rent should be no more than about 10% of your total sales volume. So if you're budgeting to do $50,000 a month in monthly sales activity, then you really want to try and get that rent around $5,000. And I'll tell you a little story about a situation where the rent wasn't 10%. There was this individual who was actually quite knowledgeable about the grocery business. His family had been in it for a number of years, but he'd never really run a business on his own and really wasn't as aware of the vagaries of running a business and what some of the dynamics should be. So he found what he thought was a great place, a great space. It was in a very good location. The rent was $9,000 a month. And he opened up a shop that had cost him about $500,000 to build out. He had some of the very best equipment, all imported from Italy, etc. So he'd really done a good job, and it was a beautiful shop. And then when he opened up, sales didn't jump the way he had thought they might. 2 years later, he phoned me and said, Jim, I think it's time for me to sell my business. And I'd kind of been watching him from the background. He hadn't done any business with me up until that point. He'd only talked to me about a possibility of a shop. Anyway, he was now doing $45,000 a month in sales. Now that's actually pretty good for a deli. The only problem was his rent was $9,000. Now if you do the math, that's 20% rent. And in a deli, it becomes very difficult to make more than 20 or 25% for you and the landlord. So here he was giving the landlord 20%, and there effectively was nothing left for him. So I looked at his books. This was 2 years after he'd opened up, and he finally got the point where rent was 20%. You can imagine what his activity was in the first 2 years before he got his sales up to $45,000 a month. It was not very good. And he lost, just in operating costs, he lost another $400,000. So he's now into this deal for $900,000. And he says, what do you think I can get for my business? And my advice to him was, it's not saleable. You've done a good job, you have a good place, but this location and your particular business model won't generate more than $45,000 or $50,000, which leaves you with rent of 20% and no profit, and nobody is going to be interested in your shop. Well, he ended up listing with somebody else for about $400,000. And about 6 or 8 months later, I was driving by, and his shop had gone dark. All the equipment was gone. He'd loaded up everything, moved it out, and effectively lost at least $800,000, because you start trying to sell equipment, used equipment, that's under distress. You're not going to get much more than 20 cents on the dollar for what you might have paid for it. So my advice to you in today's tip is do a very conservative projection of what you feel your sales will be. And if you've got a space that rents out and you're within 10, 12, maybe 14% rent on that activity, and you've been conservative and careful about your estimations, then you may have a deal that'll work quite nicely for you. But if you can't get there, and your projections are very rosy, and everybody's prone to do that when they're getting into business, they talk about, oh, we'll do this and we'll do that, and it'll be so great. And then the reality hits home. And all of a sudden you're doing sales that are only half of what you'd hope they might be. Now you're in trouble. And please don't do that. Do a very good projection of what you feel your sales are going to be. Try and keep your rent around 10%. and you will be successful. And when it comes time to sell your business down the road, because everybody gets to a point where they've had enough, if you've got a business where your rent is in that 10% range, I can tell you from experience that your business will be a hot item on the market. People will want to get involved with it. So good luck with your plans. Good luck with your projections. Be conservative. You'll never regret it. And I'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.